Well, good morning. My name is Steve Shaw. I'm an Assistant Chief with Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, and welcome to the live from FDIC 2023 Perspectives on Leadership podcast here in Indianapolis. This is wonderful. It's been a phenomenal week. You know, as we go into Friday morning, as we're kind of wrapping up the week here with everything that's going on since the beginning of the week, we have a little chance now to sit and reflect on all the things that we've seen and done and practice, and the conversations and the communications and the collaboration and all that this week. And it's kind of like taking a breath. So as we sit here this Friday morning, just taking that breath, talking about what we've seen, a little bit more classes to take today, some great classes today, going into tomorrow, we just have this little moment to reflect. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do this live podcast, especially live here at FDIC 2023. So, welcome again. This is the Perspectives on Leadership podcast, and as every month we do this, we tend to take an idea or a concept or a trait of leadership and just take a deep dive into that. So this morning I got with me Ric Jorge. Now, Ric has been an icon in the fire service for some time right now, definitely a Renaissance man. I've known him for some time now, even since I first came on the job, and we worked kind of close together in the Palm Beach County area from Fort Lauderdale, so we've always kind of been close, and we both, on a personal level, but also a geographical level. So, Ric, thank you for being here this morning, and I'm sure everybody knows you, but please say hello and just give us a quick snapshot of who you are, and we'll keep going from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am humbled to have had an opportunity to participate in the fire service. So the fire service saved my life, and the fools saved my career. And as a result, I have gotten to know you. It got me involved in training. I've trained all over the place. Worked for Palm Beach County for 24 years. Prior to that, I worked out west in a different department. Also did volunteer up in Georgia. 29 years total. Put on a lot of classes. We wrote a book on resiliency, myself, Bob Carpenter, and Dave Gillespie. It's called Developing Firefighter Resiliency. You can get it through Fire Engineering. It's a little book. We were going to put a crayon on it because we leave, room in the back for notes, and a crayon for the truckies to be able to take notes and stuff. Bobby crushed that one. He said, no, guys are going to eat it. We're going to have to put a choking hazard on there. It gets into legals and stuff, so we're not going to do that. I know I've been fortunate to train around the country a lot and know a lot of really great guys. The fire service it is a fraternity, but there are different fraternities of the fire service, and we're going to talk about the one that we think people should be involved with. Been married twice, liked it so much first time, 6 kids, 9 grandkids. I am just blessed beyond belief to have the life that I have.
And and I'm glad we're doing this together. When I was asked to do this on Friday, I'm trying to think of who to bring on to talk about a variety of things, but you're one of the first people I thought of, because we've been talking.
I thought you were just scraping the bottom of the barrel, bro.
Oh yeah, no, everybody else canceled, so you were the last person. I'm like, who else was here? God, then I saw you walking in the hallway. I'm like, hey, I happen to have a spot. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you for asking me, bro.
No, I'm honored that you're here, man. It's always good to talk shop with you, man. So I think it goes without saying that I think this week has been a tremendous opportunity to reflect and give credit to Chief Holton. I think that from the beginning to the end, even before and I'm sure going in afterwards, it was done right. It was done right. He was definitely, obviously, the icon, and the credit that was given to him throughout this entire conference was palpable. Everybody felt it. It was done right, and I think everybody that knew him at some point or some level, it was felt in a positive way. And,
Amen. I agree with you. Much like the job, tragedy and danger brings us closer.
Mm-hmm. I know he was always very honest with me. He told me what I was just talking to some of the instructors inside the break room, and we were talking about things. And I remember the first time I was starting to do podcasts and I wrote articles, he looked at my submissions, and the first time I turned in submissions, they were both turned down. So right before one of the podcasts we were on, before we went live, we were chatting. He goes, "Hey, Steve." I'm like, "Hey." He goes, "Hey, I had a chance to read your submissions." I'm like, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Yeah, you suck at writing submissions." But he was always honest. He told me what I needed to hear, and as everybody says it, and it's kind of almost being overused now, he was unapologetic in his beliefs.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I at least took that from him, among other things. And
he'd have been proud of your class yesterday, buddy.
we had a good time. We had a good
Yeah,
time.
you were firing on all cylinders.
It was a good feeling.
Good.
I think I did the conference right. I did him right, and that felt good.
I don't think you realize it, but you screwed a lot of people up, because my partner was in that class and he was blown away and tried to implement some of the things, just kind of got off track on his own thing.
So, as we're talking about a few things here today, I think that the things we want to we were talking about coming into this were a combination of things like being students in the fire service, but also reflecting. In other words, it's Friday morning, we're kind of taking a breather from the beginning of the week till now, and we have a moment here to reflect on a lot of stuff that's happened since before the beginning and up to now. And in terms of reflection, for example, we both teaching, but we're both note takers. We're both students of the fire service, and we're taking notes in different classes. And I've been taking notes all week from David Rhodes when he was doing his beginning and some of the keynotes. And some of the things that came up that just stuck in my mind that I had to write down were things like when he was talking about character and competence. And that struck a
It's a couple of homeless guys over there.
It's going to be like this the whole time, you know that?
Yeah. We're being harassed. You can't
Yeah.
see it off camera, but
Yeah, God bless
that's
their
the brotherhood,
sweet,
man,
innocent
you know?
souls. God bless their souls. All right. But, he mentioned character and competence. And that struck a nerve instantly because Stephen M.R. Covey, the son of Stephen Covey, did the 7 Habits, wrote this book, I think it's The Speed of Trust. And he says that trust was an equal part of character and competence. And then David went into a little more detail on those two topics, which I thought was very powerful. He also said some things, like we must be the firefighter that we want showing up to your house. And that just caused me to reflect anymore. But he also said something that I think that resonated with me up until now. And it was the fight's back home, not here. In other words, everybody here is in the job. Everybody here is in it. They're doing it. We're all brothers. We're all learning. We're all students of the craft. Here, it's back home. In other words, what are we doing with all that knowledge now that we have? We've been here all week. We spent the money. We've been in class. We've swung Halligans. We've taught. We've mentored. Now what? What do we do with that? And just like Billy Goldfeder says, pass it on. Well, how are we passing it on? So I want to talk about that for a second. In other words, for a guy like you, when you soak in all this knowledge and stuff, what's your next step? What do you do now? How do you pay homage to that, I guess?
So that's a great question. I'll tell you why, because I've been coming here for a while, so I know what to expect. Plus, I'm retired now. So when I come here, I get to see guys and girls that I haven't seen unless I teach somewhere. And the thing is that it's influenced me so much that it is the way that I teach and the way that I interact with people. So much like church, you're there to learn a particular way of carrying yourself and how you live your life. That's what FDIC does. It's a church for firemen.
I love that.
When you leave here, you have the option. You can be the new version of you, or you can be a hypocrite, a guy that just stands around, likes to wear the T-shirt and rah-rah, and then when it's time to really go, it's all show, So I love that, Something David said about character and competence. So character is important. Character is very important to me because we're discussing leadership. That's the foundation of leadership. And if you're not competent on the job, or you're a skippy, what a skippy is, right? It's somebody that skips ranks, up. They don't have the experience, right? You don't get the respect of the people from those positions and stuff. So that's where the competence comes in. Being able to perform in every position. You don't have to be, a master at everything. You just have had to have delved in it and understand the intricacies of it, because now what it does is it affects your judgment and your character of how you're looking at something, and it's more rounded, it's more grounded, it's based off of your experience, and you can understand that position and the difficulties of it are when our men start to groan and they start to say, hey, what about this, what about that, and because the fire service, we do a lot with little. We do a lot with little, and that's confused because we're successful at it as a successful model. But it's a testament to the heart that our people have.
Yeah, I love that you went a little deeper on the character and competence, especially the character side. in terms of like, as I reflect here and think about everything that I've taken notes on and the experiences, and I'll be honest, my fire chief, Chief Golan, he's very big on ROI, like return on investment. In other words, okay, we're sending you to this conference.
I love that.
What are you bringing back?
Love it.
And I love that there's that intentional, direct, hey,
That's
you're
right.
going, but what are you bringing back? How are you going to do that? So I think about that as I'm writing notes, as I'm having these conversations, as I'm meeting the vendors and the exhibitions and having these conversations and tweaking my presentation. Like, what am I how do I translate that to back at home? Do I need to put on a class? Do I need to have more conversations? Do I need to do some things that I picked up on and practice those? And I'm thinking of that constantly right now.
How do you develop intimacy with an entire fire department? Mm-hmm. Because intimacy requires that you jump off a cliff, bro. You let people see who you are, who you really are, and that's where the authenticity comes in. If people understand you as authentic, bro, they will walk over hot coals.
Mm. And the other thing is, you're 100% right. And I think that some of us, when we go back, we have all this knowledge. We met a bunch of crazy, amazing individuals. We have all this stuff we want to do. And so there's a dichotomy there. We want to give value back to our agencies and our regions and our districts, whatever it looks like. But we also don't want to make it about us. I don't want to go back and make this the Steve Shaw show. I want to make Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue better. I want to make our officers and our firefighters better.
It's not the Steve Shaw show. You're Johnny Carson. I'm Ed McMahon.
Okay? Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that.
This is the morning show.
The morning show. So, a couple things. So as we go through some of the notes here, I'm still looking at some of these things right here.
Do it.
And again, I was looking at a lot of notes of Dr. Lori Moore Morrell and Brian Brush, and these guys did phenomenal opening keynotes and just kept us up to date in the latest thing. I think that I've seen Dr. Moore Morrell talk a few times, and I think this is going to speak to you. She mentioned, and I've heard her say this twice already, that we need to have mental resiliency training for this career. Yep. And she mentioned that the NFL has it, and the baseball league has it, and some other folks have it out there that are other professional sports and whatnot. But what do we have? And I'm like, damn, she's right. And she got me thinking of my wife, who's a psychologist. And when she was doing her dissertation work, she was doing it on firefighter stress. And she came to me one day, she's like, Steve, I'm noticing some trends as I get this data. I'm like, well, what are you noticing? She goes, well, first of all, your sleep patterns suck. I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. We can talk about that all day. And she goes, but the second thing is, your coping mechanisms need work. I'm like, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
She goes, you don't know how to cope with all the stresses of the job. You mix up adaptive versus maladaptive coping, and you don't process it very well. I'm like, damn. So when I started thinking about that, and she was saying about that mental resiliency training, I'm thinking, is there even a choice not to be looking into that if you're not doing that already? So I know that's kind of your space. So when you think about the resiliency aspect,
Yep.
where does your mind go when you think about that in terms of how to get to some of these firefighters and build that?
So I'm glad you asked that. There is, I'm going to keep referencing, church and the fire service because there's a lot of similarities. They're all about community, okay? So our pastor, right? If you're going to attack a flock, you're going to attack the pastor. If you're going to attack a fire department, you're going to attack the fire chief. You're in a battle, you want to go for the guy that's in charge and eliminate him and create, anarchy. And so in church, a pastor is supported by a group of people, right? One for, like the mental aspect, another one for the emotional, because there's IQ and there's EQ. IQ is intellect, EQ is emotional, intellect. And so there's stability in that. You have a finance guy. You have a guy that deals with you with regards to anything sex, lust, whatever, Believe it or not, that's probably one of the most maladaptive behaviors in the fire service, right after the alcohol. And so he has this support group to keep him honed, to keep him grounded, to keep him fed. We don't do that for our fire chiefs. You've got an ops guy, you've got a deputy chief, but where is the support? How do you feed this man's soul? Because if he is the heart and soul of the fire service, then we need to take care of his mind, his heart, and his soul. And so the development of that absolutely starts with sleep. If you're not getting sleep, or if you're one of those departments that says your people can't sleep till after 6 o'clock, you should probably rethink that, because sleep is one of the most important things to keep people functioning and thinking correctly. If you have a lack of sleep, you get the irrational thinking. You want them to be grounded. You want them to have good critical thinking skills for an entire shift. Good, because that leads to good decision making. Good decision making keeps you situationally aware. Now you've got somebody that's in charge, right? You've got a company officer who is doing that, but you also have a company that's doing that. Because, true leadership, men, you don't want men to follow you. You want them to lead with you, and that's good houses are tight like that. So there's a lot of aspects to that. The sleep is a big one, but not only that, the reason mentoring is such a big deal is because we will take people and explain something. It's not just showing them, but it's explaining it to them. And the light switch goes off. And they're like, oh, I get it. And that's what you want. You want them to get it, because that profound change happened from within. So we can teach them all the external skills, right? Anybody can develop muscles, but to develop this and the critical thinking in that whole aspect, that's where your mental resiliency comes into play. Mm-hmm. It's a combination of many, many things. So it has to do with food. It has humor. Humor's a big one too, mm-hmm. right? Because you want to stimulate the hormones from the parasympathetic. And here's why. When you run a call, you're at a busy house like I was, or like you were, right? You'll get a call, it'll drop, you'll run this call. As you clear it, you probably got one in holding, and you're gonna go run that one. And then on the way back to the barn, you get another call. You could run 3-4 calls. We have left the firehouse and haven't seen it until dinner, so the sympathetic nervous system never gets to finish its complete cycle. Yep. And that information alone is very important, because if you understand that, then you know the things that you have to do for self-care. And the self-care aspect is, it's incumbent on everybody, but then on top of that, you get to the captain, because the captain or lieutenant, whoever runs the firehouse, that's the backbone of the fire service. If they're clued into that, they're going to make sure that these guys get dialed in. And there's ways to do that. I'm not going to delve that deep into it.
So my wife, a funny story, every so often I'll get a phone call.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, hey, Steve. I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? And he'll go, hey, can I talk to your wife? I'm like, sure. I'll give her the phone. She'll walk into another room, come back.
Sounds like the beginning of a bad joke,
well,
right?
No. She'll come back in the room like 20, 30 minutes later. Here you go. And she won't say a word about it. But she whatever she did, she de-escalated, had a conversation, whatever. And I love that people know that every so often they can do that with me, because she knows the fire service.
Do you know what that does for your family? It brings you closer. Your wife feels a part of that. You feel like she's a part of that.
Oh, 100%.
And so what that is, that's the serotonin, or the oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. That comes from the parasympathetic nervous system. Now together we're joined. How many wives feel on the outside?
100%. Yeah. Yes. 100%. Yes.
You love the job more than you love me. I'm sure that's going to resonate with a lot of people out there.
Yes.
Or,
yes.
And I'm not saying it's the wife telling the husband. It could be the husband telling the wife that. Could you imagine how hard that would be? Being a woman, heterosexual woman, by the way. I don't mean to insult anybody, but I don't care. Yeah. Anyways, the point is, if you're a woman on the job and you're married, your husband, you're going to work with all these guys, and some of them are intimidating looking, and there's a lot of interaction with that. Man, if your relationship isn't grounded and secure, and you're not bringing them into the fray and introducing them and stuff,
yes.
Our peer support, here's one more aspect of it. Our peer support should not be just for our people on the job. There should be a bridge, and that bridge means that they should do stuff for the spouses and the loved ones, right? And the reason is because they're going to get educated the way our people do in peer support. And the purpose for that is not for the spouse to work on the other spouse. No. It's if, you're at engine 1 and truck 2 and rescue 3, and all 3 of them go out on a call, and it's a major incident, and there's fatalities, and it's a bad day. It's a real bad day. They notify the spouses of those people at those units. And they notify one person and tell them, hey, listen, we got a significant incident. They don't have to go into detail, but they'll know, because they've had the class, what significant means.
Yeah.
There's some bad shit just happened, and this is what you can expect coming up. And the purpose for that is now the spouses don't take it personal, like, he never talks to me, he grunts,
yep.
He's short-tempered, he's quick, he's not sleeping well, he yells, he screams, Or maybe you just clam up and just get hammered to try to get numb, just to hit neutral.
Well, a lot of times we don't want to burden our families with what we come home with. We come home and we know we've had a rough shift. We know we've seen a lot of trash, and we don't want to overload our families with that. So that's one of the reasons maybe why we shut up.
It affects the emotional IQ.
Yeah. So you unpack. You opened up the door in a lot of things right there, and
It's
you got
my job,
brain
bro. I'm Ed
spinning. You got
McMahon.
my
I do
brain
that.
spinning now. So you mentioned leading with you, like the people you're around,
Yes.
leading with you, not leading them. You're may be doing that, but you're also encouraging them to lead with
That's
you.
correct.
And that drives me to think about this +1 mentality. And what I mean by that is, in terms of, I had this class on succession planning this week. And of course, the fire service is always great on succession planning. We were experts at succession planning, right? But one of the things I learned already, just recently, every time I call the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, I'll call the EMS Bureau, I'll talk to this guy, Captain Dunmore. And every time I call him, he picks up the phone and goes, "Hey, man." I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And right after that, and I'll hear two other, "Hey." And I'm like, am I in speaker? He's like, "Yeah." And every time I call him, he's always put me on speaker with his crew. And I'm like, I think to myself, I'm like, that's brilliant. You're not taking something and then passing it on second or third person. Your crew is right there, hearing what we're saying, instant redundancy, positive redundancy. You're building your team. You're creating that +1 aspect of things.
Yep.
And that's what I do now. So if I'm in the office and I get a call from anybody, medical director, Department of Health, another fire chief, we're talking about something, immediately I'll go, "Hey, Terry, Ariel, come on in here." They'll come in, we'll have a conversation, but they're present. So I'm building the backup, the +1, so they're involved in that. So if I go on vacation or step out, they're good, they heard the conversation. I'm trying to build that +1. I'm trying to build that succession plan. This is a little thing.
It's the same thing like with your wife when guys call to speak to her. Your company feels like they're included in this kind of thing. I hate using the word inclusion because it's been bastardized, but they're included in this. This is their company too. We're just we're not necessarily in charge of it. We're just we're taking care of it for 24 hours. And so it's good that if you don't do that +1 thing, then you should be, because that's what brings a company together.
100%.
Same way that's the way it brings a marriage together.
You said a couple of other things, and it got me thinking to some things that have come up, and I think during my lecture it came up, and just in general conversations, and even Dr. Morel mentioned about like some of the new folk that are coming on board right now,
Yeah.
and the challenges that brings. And of course we can talk about, I think I know that guy over there. He's very familiar to us. So, but we were thinking about the new guys and how when they're coming in, there's gaps. Whatever those gaps look like, there's a lot of gaps in the new people coming to the job. And you can't cover everything in the fire academy. You can't cover it all. And we were talking about the statements that are made when these new folk come in. And, they don't know anything. They've never started a chainsaw. They don't know how to mix fuel. They don't know what a Phillips versus a screwdriver, a flathead is, and all the common things we hear. And Dr. Moore was talking about how the Zeds, for example, haven't had the same opportunities for those individual relationships and those close bonds that a lot of us have taken for granted, because that's how we grew up. But the bottom line is, no matter what, they're coming to us. And what do we do about that? And some people still have that negative connotation. I got to teach this guy how to. That's an opportunity, dude. That's an absolute opportunity.
Phillips screwdriver, that's the +1.
Yes, sir. Yeah, from what I've seen in the pictures, yes. But I was, yeah, and that's the point. Is it's an opportunity. It's not like, oh God, I got to teach this guy something. No, you get the opportunity and the gift to basically imprint on these folk.
That's a shift in the mindset.
Yes, 100%.
That is part of the development of resiliency.
Yeah, a shift. Yes,
Absolutely.
Yes, but in terms of the people that are coming to us, you have a gift if you get those people that are green or have a gap. You're filling the gap, and if you do it right, not only do they learn the skill or whatever you're trying to teach them, you become the guy that's going to live in their minds forever as that impactful leader, influencer, whatever you want to call it. And you're going to side-eye that? That's a gift, dog. I mean, that's something that's powerful.
So I tell you where I think that originates. We've been hearing the term leadership and management for a long time. A leader knows how to develop people, because a leader, when he brings people up, he teaches them firsthand about mentoring and then explains that it's now their turn to become the teacher. And that's a leadership mentoring. That is true succession.
Yeah.
Managers don't do that. They just maintain shit. And that's the drop-off. You don't get that. Yes, you do get to teach these kids. You get to be their mentor.
Yes,
They're gonna
yes.
remember you forever,
100%.
whether it's good or bad.
And you said it right there. Whether it's good or bad, they're going to remember something. What
That's
do
right.
you want them to remember?
That's right.
And
How
that's
do
the
you want to
question.
be remembered?
Yeah.
I will attack your ego so to make it so that you can understand that the way that you come off with people, and I'm guilty of it. My career started that way. You know, I was probably one of the most disgruntled medics you have ever seen in your life. I was an angry dude. We would run an overdose for the 20th time, and I'd be like, bro, why don't you just die? You know, my captain's like, Ricky, hit the truck, go relax for a while. You know, I was that guy, you know. And then as I promoted up and went to the 3rd Battalion, everything changed, you know, it changed. But at the end of my career, it was catching up to me again, you know. But I had the support of they're just great men. They understood that. And that was what I was talking about, that level of intimacy.
I'm glad you went there in terms of they're going to remember something.
They are.
It's your choice of what they're going to remember.
Believe
That's
it.
100% accurate. And I think that when you said mindset, the change in mindset,
You know the
they
best
have
part?
to understand that.
The best part is guys will go, oh, yeah, I remember you, bro. You were one of the angriest firemen I have ever met. They go, wow, you have really changed. You're like a different animal. You know what that tells them? People can change.
Yes. 100%.
People can change. So
yes.
your examples, no matter what, throughout your entire career, you're a walking billboard, man. You know, like Bill Guston said, you know, you are and at this perfect timing for my brain to go, you know, you're an emissary for the fire service. You know, when you go out there, you're a representative. And that's how people are going to remember the fire service.
Yep.
You know,
It's a powerful word.
Yeah.
So another thing you said in terms of the busy trucks and versus maybe the slow trucks, or that time to process. You mentioned the example of running call after call after call after call, but not having a chance to basically just calm down and process everything.
Right.
It was interesting because we were talking about this recently about our medic sign-off process, or our rookies, right? And we're saying, well, they should go to a busy house because they're going to get a ton of calls. And there's accuracy to that, but do we want them going to the busiest house where they're just call after call after call after call to get the numbers in there, or do we send them to a slower house where they're getting the calls, but now they can come back, process the information they learned from it, talk to their officers, recap things, just like we're doing right now. We're recapping the week. And give them that time to reset, understand, oh, that's why I did this. That's why we did that. Whether it's a fire call, EMS call, whatever, but there's more time to process and
Absolutely.
learn. So we're challenging ourselves with that right now in terms of our folk to say, maybe we can mix that up. Not just the busy trucks, just the numbers, but what about the processing time?
So I think that, so first of all, I want to qualify what Steve's talking about. We're both from South Florida. So naturally, the number of EMS calls compared to fires, it just is no comparison. It's ridiculous. Riding an ambulance, we call a rescue, is probably the most abusive position in the fire service in Florida. It is, because it just it'll grind you. It'll eat you alive, man.
It's challenging.
It really is. And so I approach it from a different perspective. If you're at a house where you're running the wheels off your vehicles, you should probably either think about A, creating another firehouse in that zone, or B, putting a Bravo unit in there to take some of the load off. Because we could shift people around, but we're really not addressing the problem. And the problem is that these people aren't getting the opportunity to catch their breath, bro.
Yes.
You know? And it's not doing less for the same pay. No, it's extending the quality of life on the back end. It's the queen and the prince.
So, yeah, and you mentioned some good notes there, and as we go through with more, and I'm looking through my notes as we're doing this for the people that aren't just listening to this. I'm going through the notes that we've taken this week, and I think that one of the things that was said is about little things, and then servant leadership was brought up, and
Yes.
and I think that's a whole other open door a talk to have about that concept of servant leadership. I know that my fire chief is preaching in that right now and following that.
I'm a huge believer.
Yeah, and it's something that I think it's powerful to make sure that we're serving the people we work with, and we go back, how do we serve them best? Any thoughts on that general topic?
Oh, I got a lot of thoughts on a lot of topics. Servant leadership is. So I work. The reason I got this hat on, Healing Our Heroes, I work at a facility where we deal with substance abuse and mental health for uniformed personnel. If you've taken an oath, worn a uniform, it's a program designed specifically for that. We have a lot of veterans and active military, firemen, police, and A lot of them are confused because of the moral injury at work, right? Bosses are supposed to stick up for you. They don't stick up for you. The VA turns their back on you. Whatever the case may be, it's a moral injury, okay? So a lot of them think that they have had their purpose taken from them, but that's not true. See, because your purpose is servant leadership. The direction changes. When you retire, you're still servant leadership, but it takes you in a different direction. Figuring out what that direction looks like is what's the key component. And that's where it comes in with helping each other. That's where the support, your support system, where your community. And if you don't have one, you should probably get one, because that you're not going to do this alone. So servant, being of service, that's what we do. I believe that's the rent you pay for walking this earth. And then leadership is to be able to carry yourself with good moral character and be able to direct from that, because that's the society that we live in. We live in a society of laws and rules, and that dictates your values. But there's also faith involved in that, and that faith was that aspect of God was the thing that was missing for a long time. I mean, I do those prayers of like, God, you get me out of this. I swear I'll never do that again. 5 minutes later, I'm back in a jackpot, But that was the missing piece. That's the piece that brought my family together. It made me whole because it's internal, just like morals, right? Just like character. It's internal. I always focused on the external, the job, the money, the car, the house, the clothing, everything. All that's nonsense. That's a distraction. It's not nonsense. It's a distraction. You create the inside, you make the hole, you fill that hole, and you do it properly, the whole world falls right into place. You be okay with anything that happens, be grateful for anything, and it's such an empowering aspect. And that's part of the servant leadership process, and that's dropped off. We used to have dedications for firehouses all the time where the priest would come out, bless a firehouse, bless a fire truck when we're pushing it back into the bay, when it's new. And we've lost some of that tradition, but it's not only the tradition, it's the connection. Don't question your skills. Question your commitment.
No, that's a powerful door to have opened. And when I listened to what you just said,
come on, walk through it, baby.
Well, I'm walking right in. You open the door, I'm walking right in.
Kick it open.
And
baby.
I think about how we're serving our firefighters now when they start, and especially when they start. And I know that I was talking to somebody about mentorship this week, and I was having the conversation. I'm like, listen, with all that we're asking our folk to do these days compared to when we first started, there's a lot more. There's so much more we're asking our folk to do these days. So much more, like exponentially more. And when I almost feel bad sometimes. I look at the probationary firefighter manual, all the skills they got to do, all the medical, all the special ops, all this, all that, all the HR stuff. I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot here. And I think about mentorship, and I don't even. And the reason I'm bringing this up is some people have mentorship programs, some don't. Some are working on it, some are more robust than others. I don't think it's an option not to have some sort of robust mentorship program where you have your own people checking it up on you. Hey,
Agreed.
Listen, you got a lot to do. How can I help? What do you need guidance with?
Agreed.
I mean, I don't think you cannot have it these days. Like, for example, we have a pretty decent program right now, but even talking to some of these other departments, I was impressed by the robustness of their mentorship programs.
Define robustness.
It's not, okay, let me put it this way. And I was in a mentorship program as part of FAU, my college, and they have a legit program, and here's what you should be asking, here's how many times you should be meeting, here's the structure.
Nice.
Some are much more, let's say, I don't know if the word is lax or unscripted or unput together, it's like, okay, you're
not as defined.
You're going to be his mentor, figure it out. Nah, I don't think that's not appropriate. You have to give some guidance and some flesh out that program to give the mentors the guidance to teach the mentees.
So Bob Carpenter has a saying, if you don't know what the word means, it's all semantics.
Oh, love that.
Yeah,
love it.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, I love it.
The mentorship has to be defined. It has to be described.
Yes.
It's like love. I once was asked by somebody, what does love mean? And I thought about it, and every time I gave an answer, it's when you really like something. And no, that's like. Well, you're really caring. No, that's caring. And it like that. And the reason it's so difficult to define, much like mentorship, because it's a verb. It's something you do. It's not a noun. It's something you do. And so there are I'll keep it in firefighting terms. There are skill sets that build, right? So your forcible entry skill set, it's designed by design that way. Then you go to your search, then you go to your roof, then you go to all these stuff, and then you go to all these different things, right? And then you put them together, and now we have a fireman. And now you put him under duress, and little by gradually build him up. So now you have a fireman that can anticipate the storm and react in an appropriate manner. It's the same thing with mentoring. That's what we're doing. We're trying to build our people up. But mentoring is not only the external stuff, it's also the internal stuff. So when you're mentoring a rookie, say, hey, listen, you're going to hear a lot of guys giving you a lot of crap. You're a millennial, blah, 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 blah. But I want to tell you something. We had to learn how to use a computer. We had to learn how to use this complicated EKG machine that we have now. We had to learn about, how to intubate people, King tube, all these other, now they're doing they're measuring CO levels, all kinds of stuff. And if you're on hazmat, holy crap, there's just so much technicality to it. You are coming, so I'm telling the millennials and the Generation Z, you're already prepared for that. You already have experience with that. I'm going to teach you some of the things that you're weak on to develop that weakness into a strength, and that's where the mentorship is. I mean, you're sharing part of your heart with this kid. You need to treat these people like they're your children, that you care about them that much.
Like their family.
Yeah. Or if that don't work for you, I'll attack your ego. You need to build these people up, because one day they're going to be in a fire with you and they may save your ass.
So let's transition a little bit. Now, we both taught this week. So let me ask, how was your teaching this week?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't, I know Ric Jorge. He don't impress me, bro. I know that guy, he don't impress me at all.
You impress me.
I know, I appreciate it, but I'm just saying that I keep myself in check and stay humble. Here's what happened. I got a thing, I ran a little short on time, so I had to skip through a few slides, right? It happens. And I got, in the eval, I got a couple of them. Like, I would have liked to have heard what you skipped. And I thought to myself, you know what? I went back to my PowerPoint and I looked it over. I eliminated 25 slides. I was like, I don't even know what I was thinking. Why did I put that in there? So I need people's criticism to be able to make my class better, because it's all about retention for the student, understanding and retention. That's it. It's not about me. It's about them. So how'd the class go? It went well. The information got transferred. Nobody left. So, that's a good gauge. Nobody left, and the doors weren't locked. So
I was thinking about this in terms of like our role as both presenters and passing along of knowledge, I guess, and then the dichotomy of us being in class and taking notes and making sure we manage that. And in my class on Wednesday, Bill Gustin was in there. I didn't notice it until like halfway through, and I see Bill in there, and I'm like, that's it. Between him being in there, taking notes, mentoring me.
I guarantee you he took about 2 or 3 pages of notes.
That's what he does. That's what he does.
He sure does.
But also in the room, I asked the group around the room, how long they've been in the fire service. And I started off with asking who's been here like 0 to 5 years. And there's a handful of them. And I'm like, guys, stand up. And they're all embarrassed. I'm like, stand up now. There's a handful of guys that have been there 5 years or less. And I'm like, and they're kind of giggling at it, everybody's laughing at them, But I'm like, guys, you're doing it right. You're doing it right. You have less than 5 years on, and you're at this conference surrounded by these people who are in it. So you're doing it right, and they got a clap. And then we went to the 5 to 10.
Just take the mic out and drop it on the ground now, bro. That's beautiful.
But then we went to the 5 to 10. The newer guys that are still in it as well. They're learning. Maybe they're an officer at this point, but they're there as well. And then all the way up to the 20, 25 years. And we got to the 30-year guys. I'm like, hey, who's been here more than 30 years? And there was a ton in the class. I go, everybody stand up. I go, we look for opportunities to see what is being displayed in terms of leadership and humility. And these guys are in it. They're students of the game. After 30 years, they're still in the class, still taking notes, still exchanging that knowledge. And I'm like, and we gave them a clap because it's being displayed to you. Good communication is being displayed, humbleness, the continuation to learn the craft was being displayed right there. And I tried to give them credit for that. And it's powerful, but it's one of those things that I remember going back. We have to keep doing that. The work is never over.
Never.
The work is never over.
When you think you know it all, you should leave.
100%.
Because
100%.
you're always a student. There's always things to learn.
The work is never. There's always going to be the work.
And it ain't done till they throwing dirt on you.
Mm-hmm. No. Now, and I was talking to some people afterwards, and I tell you what, one thing that I did with my class, and I'm happy I did. I gave them homework. Okay? I gave them homework.
Really?
I gave my people homework. So this is what I did. I go, you have to do 3 things for me. You have to think about an instructor that has impacted you in some part of your life. Someone that has massively influenced you. 2, call them. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right after this class, you must call them. And just say, hey, I appreciate this, that you did this for me. And then I want you to email me and just let me know what that looked like.
This is familiar. Didn't you do this in New Hampshire when we were there?
Yes, but I didn't get the response I got this week.
No.
So this week,
Really?
right, this week, I've already got about, I think it's up to 12 right now responses back. Now, some of those emails are, hey, I reached out to this guy. We had a great conversation. Thanks for having me do that. Great. Awesome. I'm happy. And I'm sure that person appreciated it. I got some emails that were, I called this guy that influenced me. We got on the phone. We were on the phone for half an hour in tears.
Yeah.
Reminiscing and thanking each other and stuff. And I just wanted to thank you for that. Listen, talk about mic drop, I'm good. If I have
Let's
that
stop
one
there
response,
for a second. Why do you think, and you guys think about this, why do you think there were tears involved in that?
Why do I think?
Yeah, why?
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Right, because
So
you get an email and the guy's like, listen, we talked for about 30 minutes and we were in tears. It was really great because the emotions and everything, the bond, right? And you're both on the same level. There's no embarrassment, you know? Why do you think that happened?
So here's my interpretation of
Yeah.
it. And it's kind of another story to kind of feed into this one.
Okay.
I write handwritten Christmas cards to all my friends and family. It takes me weeks. It takes me weeks to write handwritten Christmas cards to all my friends and family.
I would love to do that, but my hands shake so much you wouldn't be able to read it.
But I find that after I write the cards and I talk to those people afterwards, and this has happened this last year, the most common response I got after talking to them, they're like, oh, thank you for the card. I needed that. That was the response. I needed that. And I heard it a lot. And I'm like, damn, that's profound. Like, I needed that Christmas card, that thank you, that the recognition, the remembrance, whatever you want to call it. So in this, I'm still dwelling on it. I'm still processing it as well. Because as I'm seeing the results, I'm like, I'm so glad I asked them to do that.
Yes.
So there was 2 things there. The response I got back in the emails were, thank you for having me do that. Like, I was intentional. I would like you to do this. There was intention. There was deliberance. You know, deliberance? Did I make that word?
Deliverance, yeah, I like it.
So,
Deliverance,
but it was
deliverance.
intentionally said, I need you to do this, and it resulted in some positive after effects. So I think that, one, being intentional about asking for something, or whether it's a leader leading a fire department or us asking us to do homework, or whatever it is, the intentional part. I would like you to do this. Just making sure I'm intentional. This is what my expectation is. So that was the first part that I realized, and I'm happy I did that. But as for the emotional reaction, I almost want to pass it back to you. When you have somebody reach back out to you after a while and say, man, you know, I just want to let you know that I care, or I remember this, you did this with me, and it meant a lot. I'm still processing this right now. I'm reading these emails, and I don't know why it's so impactful, but it's pleasing to see. It's really pleasing to see that just so fresh.
Yeah, I think it's part of the rounding us out process. So that occurs because human beings by nature, we are social creatures. You isolate us, you go cuckoo. You know, you could say you could be alone for a while, but at some point you'll have to have interaction. Now, are there some people that can be alone and be okay with it? Yes, but by nature, 99% of human beings are social creatures. You can't deny them that. So when you take a retiree or somebody else that's no longer working in the fire service and you reach out to them and you thank them, or even somebody that's on the job and you reach out to them with that type of intention, the emotions are going to come up because it's a sense of community and belonging and closeness and purpose and intention. All of that comes into play.
I think I figured it out.
Okay.
I just had something just flashed in my mind.
Call
I
an
think I figured
epiphany,
it out.
brother. Yes.
You mentioned something before about feedback and follow-up. You mentioned it before briefly.
Yes.
I think that when we think about communication, and we think about that communication cycle where you have the sender and the message and the receiver.
Oh, you're
and then
going into the fine print
I'm
now,
going
bro.
deep, bro.
Okay.
I'm going deep.
All right.
I'm going
all right.
deep. Just like when I put a saw through a garage door, I'm going deep, baby. So when you have the sender, the message, the receiver, but then that feedback loop, you go from single stage communication to transactional, right? And I think that's, if you think about, like, let's use like an example for our medical calls we run. We were talking medical calls. How many times do we drop them off at the hospital and never see them again? So how do we know this worked, or we had value, or they got better, or whatever. A lot of times we don't know.
Yeah.
So there's that missing aspect of the feedback. So what this provided, those people that they were calling, was the closing of the loop, the completion of the cycle that, yes, I provided value to somebody at some time. God, that feels good, because we don't get it enough. That's the answer to your question.
There is appreciation to that. I agree with you 100%. But to know that you were of value, to know that your life meant something, that you did something that was significant, where somebody reached out to you and it touches you. That's the separation of the IQ. So the mindset determines the emotion. And when you come at it with the intention of giving thanks, right? You're grateful for this person. It affects the emotion aspect, which in turn affects the biology, the nervous system. And it's all a process. So we can intellectualize that. But unless you do it, it's like trying to explain, okay, I'm going to go there. It's like trying to explain an orgasm to somebody that's never had one. I could explain it to you and you'll get it up here. But until you have one, you'll never know what it feels like. And it's the same way with that. That's the sense of belonging. So my next question is, why do you think that it's done so much more in the fire service than in our personal lives at home with our families?
Man, you're really going deep. So let me ask you, we got about 15 minutes, right? I don't even know how deep we can go here. Holy crap. But you bring up a darn good point.
You got a timer on, bro?
I'm just, listen.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I got you. All right.
I think about that a lot.
We'll throw them out of here. We'll go for days,
in terms of it's almost like, everybody talks about the balance, maintaining that work-life balance and such.
Yes.
And that's the
It's tough,
magic,
bro.
how do you freaking do that? But you mentioned about why we do it in the fire service and not the family. And I'll be the first to admit, sometimes I in the past, I put a lot more work into my firehouse, my crews, following up with them, and then I come home to the wife and brag about it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this guy's going through this, we did this, and we connected, and she's like, hey, I'm right here. What about me? And I'm like, oh shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But and you mentioned it before, we get so wrapped up and passionate and ingrained in the job because it's just what it is. We love being here that it defines us. It defines us. And sometimes it defines us to the point where we let the family slip a little bit, if not a lot. And that's dangerous. I'll give you, this is a funny story. I was showing my presentation PowerPoint to my fire chief, right? And in the beginning, I do a little bit of, this is who I am, and blah, 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 the pedigree stuff, just a little couple notes. And then I do this and this, and this is my family. And he goes, Steve, you just said that you believe in family first. I'm like, yeah. He goes, why in your slide deck is your family here and you up here with all your job stuff? And I'm like, my gosh. So what I did, and I made sure, I was intentional about telling the class the same thing. I put that slide right in the beginning. I'm a father
it's a great
and I'm a
story
husband.
for the class.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Perfect.
I'm a father and a husband, and then and then halfway through the class, I'm like, if you're gonna have that integrity, where your actions match your words, let me give you a very simple example. And I showed them the slide, and like, but it is a little thing, but is it a little thing? No.
Nope.
If somebody calls you and says, hey, what's up? Hey, listen, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Click, and you don't call them back. It's a little thing, but those little things build up.
That's correct.
Little things build up over time. Trends and
especially with somebody you're sharing a bed with.
100%.
Yeah, because that's ugly, going to bed mad. Ooh.
Yeah.
So there's a book called Leadership Lessons of Jesus, right? And in it says, love your spouse the way that I love the church, right? And so it's him, your spouse, and your family, and then work. Work goes down the line. I have been doing it backwards all this time. And it wasn't until I got near the end of retirement, right, my second marriage, that I kind of finally figured out, I should probably develop some skills in my relationship at home with my wife. Because at work, right, danger, when risk is high, focus is sharp. When risk is low, you tend to wane, So we're constantly training with danger, and it creates a very, very tight bond.
100%.
But when's the last time you went to a class on how to treat your wife, well, how to, take your wife, where to take your wife for dinner, where to go to places that create intimacy with your wife, how to take your children to games and be involved, how to take them on travel events and not be a maniac on the road. There's none of these classes, right? So we got to learn on the fly. We got to learn on the fly. Where are you feeding your soul, bro? Where are you going for this? You got to go somewhere, you know? And so that's where these types of lessons are so impactful, especially for your class, because you've got your audience, and as you're dropping these bombs on them, they're just kind of they're sitting, their eyes aren't, glazed over because you're overwhelming them with IQ, which information, right?
Yes.
They're making the association and the connection with the emotional side. So you're bridging a gap. Their freaking neurons are firing at high gear. They're developing neural pathways in the process in your class. This is a very valuable tool.
Well, and you mentioned the classes, and I think that, and not to go to about FDIC, but I think it's appropriate. There are so many different types of instructors and types of personalities that one person may resonate with somebody, one person may not, but there's so much of it here that somebody's going to resonate with you in a variety of ways. There's multiple, you're being flanked by different things, and you're learning from different people in different ways, and you're going to get it from somewhere.
Hopefully, yes.
And so we got about 10 minutes left, right? So let's do this. What one nugget or thought as you're leaving this week do you walk away with? In other words, as you're leaving here, between the interactions, the teaching, the bonds, coming back and as you're getting recharged, what's the one thing that you're leaving with? Give me one thing that you're leaving with this week as you go back home.
So we've been here for a week, right? When I leave here, I don't go back to South Florida. I fly to Atlanta. My wife's driving up to our farm up there. She's picking me up at the airport, and we're going to stay there until June. Right. In between, we're going to do the Metro Atlanta Firefighter Conference, and we got a class. We got the cadre coming up and stuff. And so I should probably explain to everybody that we're in a fishbowl right now, and there's windows all around us. That's who we've been waving to and everything. We got people pulling their britches down and all kinds of stuff. Some bearded guy out there flipping his tongue at us. So my point is, the thing that I'm walking away with is that I get to go home now. And now I'm going to be with my wife, who's been without me for a week.
Yep.
She had to pack up the house and load the dogs up and up to the cabin. And she did this all without her husband being there, right?
100%.
So I have given you my heart and soul while I have been here. Now it's my wife's turn to get my heart and soul.
Dude,
that's what I'm walking away from. This conference has been different than a lot. And it's because of Bobby's exit and David's entrance.
Yes.
And it's opened the door to a lot of things. How many times have you heard people talk about God and faith and these kind of things at this fire conference?
Yep.
It's been increasing over the years, And by the way, if you don't believe, don't sweat it, bro. It ain't an STD. You ain't going to get it just because you hear about it, all right? So, but the goal is, now you can't be a hypocrite. You have to be authentic. Because we can spot bullshit a mile away.
Oh, we're good at it.
Yeah,
we're awesome. One thing firefighters are good at is spotting bullshit and calling people out on it. God bless us.
That's what I'm walking away with, to continue to be authentic like this when I get home. Because we have a tendency of getting home, we're like, oh, thank God that's over with. Even though it was great, I'm exhausted. It's a lot of walking, bro. You know how many steps you put in one afternoon? Forget about the day.
Yep.
And then the conversation's endless, sleeping in a hotel, which sucks, I mean, but going home isn't, okay, now I got my time off. No, now I get to be a servant, leadership for my wife. We got grandkids coming up to visit us. We got all kinds of things. My children, my daughter's birthday is today, as a matter of fact. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. It's the 2nd, and May 2nd, we're going to fly her up to the cabin if she'll have it, She's, by the way, she's an RN at Trauma ICU at North Broward.
Smartest thing I ever did is go into RN school and become a nurse. It's weird to say that, but it's probably the smartest thing, one of the smartest things I ever did.
So you truly are a needle fairy.
I am. Proud. Yeah.
God bless you, brother.
I started my own union, I'm local number one, the only one.
Oh, Lord.
So,
what do you walk away with?
So I love that you just ended with family, because I think that's something that needs to be preached here as well. Like, listen, you're going home, take care of you. You've been gone.
Yeah.
I think I'm so happy you mentioned that, because when we get home, we're tired. Like, oh, we just came back. Well, you have a family that's been without you for a week. Pay attention to them.
Get your mind right.
So my mind goes to the little things. My mind goes to what some people can be seen as a little thing. Like, I was only gone for a week. No. That's your version of what could be a little thing or trivial. To them, it was monumental. I had to do this. I had to take care of the house. I had to take care of the kids. So your version of something that was maybe small or trivial is not the same in somebody else's eyes.
That's right.
I used an example this week for years ago when I had my own firehouse. I made my crew little wooden chalks, little door chalks. Cost me nothing. I cut up some 2x4s, spray painted, put their name on it, put a zip tie on them.
They
can hang on the
loved
door.
it, bro.
But for me, it was like it's something I was getting rid of scrap wood, so for me it was nothing. I gave one to one of the floats that went through our station, Ariel. He's now a chief officer with our department. And recently we were talking about it, and he reminded me, hey, you remember that chalk? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I still carry it. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. He goes, no, you don't understand. When you gave me that chalk, I was part of the team.
That's right.
I was part of the group. You gave me that chalk. I'm like, oh, I'm part of the group. And I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't realize it. My version of little was his version of I'm part of the team. So I think about the little things, and I'm trying to make sure that as I go through this and all the notes that I've taken, that I have the foresight to go, okay, this wasn't little, follow up with this, and I don't want to think about those little things as little, because somebody else may be looking at it totally different than I am. So my perspective, my mindset, I want to make sure I go in with the right mindset. But I'm going to default back to what you just said. Once I get home, it's about family.
Yep.
And taking care of them.
So back to that example, is you ever hear the saying, the devil's in the details? You don't do the details, that's where the devil lives. What does the devil do?
100%.
He takes you away from your primary mission. Are they trying to tell us we're done?
We got a few minutes left, but essentially we are done. So as we're wrapping up,
Yeah.
You know what? I think we both agree this has been another great conference, another great opportunity. It's wonderful to see people we know before, meet new people.
It is.
Meet all the people out there that are hungry for knowledge, meet people that are in it, and it's rejuvenating like it always is. And I love that we're doing this now and we're reflecting on it. We're being intentional about reflecting on what we've seen, done, and then what do we do about it going forward. So I guess as we're wrapping up here, you know, we started with gratitude. I'm going to end with gratitude. You know, thank you for Fire Engineering. Thank you for FDIC for allowing us to have this platform. Thank you all for Chief Rhodes, Diane, everybody that gives us the opportunity to be here. And of course, thank you to Chief Halton for everything he's done up to now. And it's something that we won't. The last thing I'll say is when I was doing my presentation, I know that what I was thinking of is, am I doing him proud? Am I doing him proud? And I think that I walked away feeling I did, but it's not over.
No.
It's not over. Am I doing him proud by making sure I carry it on, pass it on? And am I doing him proud by going home and take care of my family?
Yep.
It doesn't end here.
Yep.
And that's what I think we probably should end with. So, Rick, thank you for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Thank you, bro.
This has been an awesome talk, and I love you, and this has been great. And I think
Long overdue. We've been meaning to do this for a while.
Yes, 100%. So that's all I got. I think we're pretty much done. So as we wrap up, everybody enjoy FDIC. Everybody enjoy the rest of the content.
Like Johnny Carson, remember he used to throw it behind him? We're done.
All right, and we're done. And we're out. Have a great conference, everybody.